Oh, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kimberly Johnson. I am the chair of the Ethics Committee, and we welcome you all to our Power Hour from attorney to paralegal, from paralegal to attorney, rather. And our guest speaker is Misty Pykar McWilliams. Got that right? Oh, good. Great, great. What we'll do, as always, we'll introduce our guest speaker. She will start from there. And again, we always encourage you to ask questions, drop your questions or comments in the chat, or if you want to unmute and speak directly to her, feel free to do that as well. All right, let's get started here. Misty Pykar McWilliams started her legal career as a paralegal in the fields of medical malpractice and debt collection before she became an elder law attorney focusing on guardianships, estate planning, and estate administration. She transitioned to state government, where she has served in various roles, including hearing officer, certificate of need analyst, legal services developer, and as the Division of Aging and Adult Services rulemaker coordinator. She is an active member of the North Carolina State Bar and 10th District Judicial Bar. During her free time, she enjoys spending time with her family. Misty, take it away. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Kimberly. I appreciate that. So I received a message, there's low bandwidth. So if you can't hear me or you have issues, just let me know. First and foremost, I want to make this very valuable for everyone. So I'm assuming a lot of you are paralegals, and several of you may be wanting to make that to being an attorney. No shame in your game. If that's the case, can I either get a head nod or a yes in the chat message so that I know how to take and speak for the next hour? So, like I said, feel free to put in there in the messages that you do want to make that transition. I'm assuming a lot of you are wanting to do that, so that's the way I'm going to speak. Also, there's going to be a lot of little stories and tidbits as a paralegal and as an attorney about how to network. Okay, so we've got one person at CCU Law. Go Eagles, that's where I graduated from. Okay, sounds good. So let me get to the presentation. Kimberly, can you confirm that you can see my screen?
I can.
Okay, awesome. All right. So we're going to talk about going from paralegal to attorney and what you need and how you need it. And I'm going to give you some professional tips in addition to just things that I've learned along the way. Okay. So first and foremost, how did I get here? So like always, I knew someone. So think about the last 10 to 15 years that you've worked and how many times did you take and get the position and or maybe even a personal thing that you like on a board? How did you get there? Was it because you knew someone that knew someone, or is it because of what you knew? And lots of times it's what you know coupled with who you knew. And that is why I'm going to talk about that, is because that's very important, especially in the legal industry. So I started in medical malpractice. I was one of those ambulance chasers, if you will. And the way I got this job as a paralegal was I just happened to go to the same private school that the attorneys were sending their children to. And so as a result, they knew what type of work product I would create. Let's face it, they really didn't know. They just had this bias, right? That this is what probably would come from me. But basically they kind of knew of me, and as a result I got my first job. Then I dabbled in criminal and workers compensation, and with criminal law, the one thing I will say about that is I really enjoyed that from the standpoint that it was the no questions asked. If someone said my retainer is $20,000, you'd get your $20,000 in cash if you were that law firm by the end of the day, no questions asked. So I enjoyed that probably a lot, just because it was a world that I'm not familiar with. Then I ended up in collection law. It was two attorneys, And this was a totally different law firm. It was two attorneys, one did bankruptcy and then one did collection law. The one who did bankruptcy had one paralegal. The one who did collection law had about 46 paralegals. And so I would hear all the time, well, guess what? You can't get blood out of a turnip. Well, yes, I'm aware if you have no money, you can't get anything, but you can squeeze it. And the reason I mention that is because so many times I would take and try to assist someone. Maybe they had $2,000 that they owed, and I would get a confession of judgment and hold it, if you know what that is. But that way the judgment wouldn't get on their record. And then the next thing I know, they drive up in a BMW. And I thought, okay. So again, as a paralegal, I worked for two separate law firms. Both were small. I basically did a little bit of it all: medical malpractice, criminal law, workers' compensation, collection law, very little bankruptcy. And then I was just maybe 2 years out as a paralegal, and I decided to go across the parking lot and talk to another attorney. And the changing moment was when this older male attorney said, young girls like yourself make pretty paralegals. And I thought, oh, yeah, well, we do fine as attorneys too. So the picture that I have is one that was intentional, and it's basically me telling this guy to kiss it. Okay. And the rationale behind that is, as paralegals, your attorney means everything as far as the way that they do work product, the way they create your schedule. Is it flexible? Is it not flexible? And I'm talking about private practice here. If you're a paralegal for a major corporation, it's different. But if you are a paralegal to that specific attorney, it really is a very intimate relationship. And as far as how you work together, it matters 24/7. For example, are they calling you after hours to get this document done because the statute of limitations was passed? Or are they giving you some flexibility for you to have your own life? The other thing that I know, just being a paralegal myself, was the notion of you expected me to do whatever you requested of me, whether it be depositions, interrogatories, a complaint. But then from that point in time, how many times are you reviewing it? Am I able to get it out the door? And couple that with everything else. So again, the changing moment was when I was told by a male attorney that I do fine as a paralegal. So how did I get here as an attorney? Well, I went to Central School of Law as an older student. And for several of you that are familiar with Central Law School, they have two different programs. They have the day program and the older program. And the day program is typically, but not always, a lot of students who go from undergrad to grad. For the night program, it's really older students who typically have maybe even had their first career path or first profession. And so they are basically thinking, okay, I was a chiropractor, this worked for 20 years, but now I want to be an attorney. When I was 26, 27 going through law school, I didn't understand it. Now that I'm in my 40s, I understand greatly how after 20 years of doing something, you can go from one industry to the next. I graduated in 2010 during what was called the Great Recession. I sent out over 100 letters to law firms here. I Googled it. I went to LexisNexis, which a lot of you are probably familiar with, and got the list of attorneys. And I said, hey, I'm just graduating. I have these basically 4 years of experience as a paralegal, and I would love to be able to understand what I need to know about that industry, whether it be elder law, whether it be criminal law, whether it be medical malpractice. And for each one, I had a reason why medical malpractice was very important to me, or why elder law was very important to me, or why collection law was very important to me. Would anyone like to guess by just shouting out how many people responded to those to those 100 letters? Did anybody want to just throw out an answer? Okay. Well, I gave you the answer. It was 2. So I got 2 responses back, and both of them said, hey, we appreciate you sending us this letter. We're not interested. So as a result, here I am, recently graduated, 2010. At that point in time, Central did not have a very good chain as far as like linking a mentor with a mentee. I know they've been working on it. So I and another person opened shop, and we both were paralegals. So I had done what I had done, and she had done different things more for corporate, like mergers and acquisitions. And we thought, hey, 2 paralegals can probably team up. And if we do this, then we probably would know more than someone who's just coming out of law school. And the reason is because we already knew how to manage accounts. We already knew how to create a tickler system for statute of limitations. We already knew how to do the basics of working with people and being the rainmakers and bringing people in, right? So we thought of all the people that we graduated with, perhaps we too could work it out. That's not the case. So what I will tell you is if you do decide to go to a small law firm, be aware that just like the paralegal and the attorney is a very, unique relationship, your business partner is a very unique situation. And so during, I'd say, a few years during that time that we were together, I kept thinking, well, maybe I'm not doing something right. So if you do decide to go to the private practice route, make sure that your business partner is someone that you work well with together. And one way that you can do that is to be of counsel to that law firm or to co-counsel together on multiple cases so that is this a person who is a procrastinator? If so, I'm not going to do well with them. Or are they someone who's a planner? And that's what I am. So I deal great with people who like to plan. As a result, I decided to go solo. So I created this law firm, and it was estate planning, estate administration, and guardianship. So if you're thinking about doing this, the one thing I will tell you is that almost every attorney in North Carolina dabbles in estate planning and estate administration. So just be aware that if you go to Craigslist or if you go to Avo or to some other place, you'll see this type of information out there. And one of the things not to take to heart is if, for example, immigration law is having a really hard time, and let's say that there's such a backlog at the federal level, they can't move work through, then you may see an attorney who practices in a totally different realm trying to get their business in. And so they're offering a very discounted rate. So just be aware, you need to know the ins and outs of every industry. And as a paralegal, you kind of know this. So I want to go back, I'm going to escape, and I'm going to go back to you all and see if you guys will comment. So what are the industries that you're in, and what's something you've learned? So working in elder law, I've learned that typically, not always, if they're over 60, the virtual thing is not going to happen. They want in person. Okay. For collection law, I learned as a paralegal that the people who really owe the money and it was just an unfortunate event, they will be the first to want to pay, but they can pay you very little. And dependent upon your client, whether it be BB&T or Merrill Lynch or whatever company it may be, it's dependent upon them if they'll take that offer. So is there anything that you all have learned in your industry that would be beneficial for you guys to know if you wanted to transition as an attorney? Let me see if I see anything.
Feel free to unmute and respond, or you can drop your comment or questions in the chat.
Okay. All right. So if you have anything, let's see. I think I saw something.
From Devin. Go back. It's got Devin says, I think that's Devin. I hope so. Yeah. I am a student. I'm interested in immigration and law and criminal defense. And Elizabeth says, I'm in estate planning, estate admin, And there, I've learned that clients are extremely impatient in these areas, and effective organization and time management, they are a must. Talk about that. Yeah.
So I'm going to kind of hint at all these. So Devin, for immigration law, if that's what you want to go into, then you've got to understand that politics does play into your budget. And what I mean by that is I have several colleagues who are attorneys that do immigration law. And when several executive orders came out where they
Okay.
basically put a standstill at, those attorneys had to move to other types of law because at the end of the day, you got to put food on your table. So think about that type of stuff as you're going into your different practices. Okay. Criminal defense. The cool thing about criminal defense is you can pretty much sum it up in two ways: people that have a lot of money and people that have no money. And so just dependent upon what you want is how you're going to be able to get, where you go. So if you want to deal more with DWIs and things like that, you can't charge as much. But from a practice standpoint, you'll be doing a lot more accounting. If you're doing more criminal defense as far as murder and rape and doing defense of those type of cases, they'll be a lot more intricate, but at the same time, you'll get more bang for your buck. For estate planning and estate administration, several of you mentioned that. And so you basically already confirmed what I've already said. Remember me saying that at the very beginning, everybody dabbles in estate planning and estate administration?
Mhm.
Well, the fact that there's multiple paralegals and they do that shows and confirms what I've just said. So take that into consideration. If you're going to Currituck or Craven County, you may only have one competitor. If you're going to Wake County, then if you shake a tree, 25 estate planning attorneys are going to pop out. So just know your base. And then the e-court system. So yes, the e-court system, for those of you who do not know, is our court system is turning into a digital system. Now, the way it used to work is if you wanted a court file, you would basically either schnoozle with the clerk and say, "Oh, Anne, I love you so much. How are the kids?" And they would say, "Well, during my personal time, I'll go take and make this file for you." And you would say, "Oh, well, give your love to the kids," right? Or you would have to drive and go get that file and charge your client a half rate. Or you would know someone who you would scratch their back and make a copy of the file, and they would do the same thing for you down the road. Fast forward with the e-court system, everything's public information, which can be good and bad. Because one of the things I learned is when I was being mentored by an attorney, I thought he was very pushy. Fast forward, I now know, looking at the e-court system, that he had filed bankruptcy during the time that I was being mentored by him. And so things are starting to come connection. So I think there's a benefit to not having access to the e-courts, but I think there's also a benefit to having access to that data. All right, cool. So let's go back to the PowerPoint and keep your questions coming, okay? Because I want to make this worth your while.
All right, make sure again, as we transition back to our slides, drop your comments and your questions in the chat so Misty can respond to them. Go right ahead.
So solo practitioner, what do you need to know? And or if you're in a dual, like let's say partnership as far as 2 or 3 attorneys. Well, you're the IT person, you're the lawyer, you're the accountant, you're the messenger, you're everything in between. And I know people who outsource that stuff, but it's still, at the end of the day, my colleagues who are solo practitioners or in small law firms are still working Saturdays and Sundays. I, on the other hand, got a random phone call one day, and it was, "Would you like to do hearings for the state? You can keep your law firm." And I thought, okay, sure. Now, how did I get this random phone call? Well, this person knew a friend who knew that I had done Medicaid appeals. So in elder law, what I used to do is if someone had, let's say, $2 million, I would take and transfer assets out of their name so they would be Medicaid eligible. And granted, I didn't take people who had $10 million and do it. What I did was older family who maybe the husband got cancer and he's saying, "Why should my wife have to suffer because the community spousal resource allowance amount is not sufficient in order for her to qualify. So basically, I would just do a little bit of transfer of assets so that they could still get those benefits, but not deplete the resources for both spouses. So again, someone knew me who knew what I did, and as a result, I got the random phone call. First point that I made, or if you remember, it's all about networking. So I came up with this little thought process when I was in private practice. Who are your favorite 5? So think about, number 1, the pros and cons of every industry. And we kind of highlighted that. You know, immigration law can be political. Estate administration and elder practice, everyone's in it. So think about the pros and cons. And then from there, think about your favorite 5 industries, as in who would you depend upon? For me, in estate planning and elder law, it was, CPAs, financial advisors. I got really cozy with the funeral homes, very, very cozy with the funeral homes, because it's about who you know and who you're networking with. So if you are, let's say, in law school and you're trying to transition to become an attorney outside of that, unless you're going to stay in that law firm, and I know some law firms do pay for you to go to law school and they onboard you as an attorney, as a partner after the fact, think about who would be your fave 5 industries and where you want to go. If you're doing elder law and you want to do mergers and acquisitions, well, don't be going to the associations about elder law, guardianships, probate. Be going to the ones about economics, artificial intelligence. That's where you need to spend your time. So at the state, I've done just a little bit of hodgepodge of everything. So hearings and appeals, I handled those for Department of Health and Human Services. That was Medicaid-based, CHIP-based. It was mental health, PASSAR, all of these, just all different things that are related to Department of Health and Human Services. I did certificate of need for a while. That is basically the government's permission slip to let hospitals and nursing homes and different medical providers go to where they need to go and build like a location. Currently, I'm the legal assistance developer and the rulemaking coordinator at the Division of Aging. So legal assistance developer in a nutshell is expanding the quality and quantity of legal services for people 60 and older. So talk about a never-ending job. The rulemaking coordinator is in every state agency, you have someone who's appointed in North Carolina who is required to make rules for that agency. So as an example, if you're in public aid law, all of the rules for the Department of Social Services, like Medicaid eligibility, SNAP benefits, refugee status and refugee benefits, those all come through that rulemaking coordinator that's tied to that state agency. So the first thing you need to do is learn how to communicate legal concepts clearly. Wait, let me back up. You just need to know how to communicate concepts clearly. That's it. And you'll see there's a running theme here where I tell you the things you need to do, and then I'll strike through legal. Because one of the things that legal has taught me is that we do have a skill set. I've always joked that, doctors have to have a steady hand and accountants have to be good with money. But attorneys, they just don't have anything now that the internet basically makes knowledge, accessible for all. Well, that's not correct. Language is our skill set. Use it wisely. Learn when to speak, learn when not to speak. Forget the legal jargon and technical terms and explain in plain language. Just by virtue of being an attorney, people are going to think that you're intelligent, whether you are or not. Okay. They're going to say, oh, well, they went to law school, or they did this, or they did that. And so as a result, you're already going to get their respect. And I'm not talking about, your family or anything. I'm talking about when you're out and about with people that you deal with. If that's the case, know who your audience is, know how to be persuasive, and know what to say and what not to say. This works on family too. I use this on my husband quite a bit. For example, He is taking my car today for an oil change. He's a mechanic. And I just casually mentioned to him, there's no one that I would trust with my car as much as I would with you and how you do this. So I want you to be able to take my car for an oil change. And of course, it worked out, right? So think about what you can do. And I'm not talking about manipulating everyone. No, I'm talking about the power of persuasion. Okay. Tailor your communication style to your audience, whether it be a judge, a jury, or a client. And one of the things that I've learned is make sure that if you are in the courtroom and you are before a judge and or jury and you're speaking on benefit, on the benefit of your client, make sure that your language is so plain that the other side understands. I've done very little work as far as trial work, but I've done a little bit of evictions, personal and professional. And what I will tell you is that these are heard by magistrates. And if the individual on the other side, so usually I'm the plaintiff and or I'm representing the plaintiff, if I really break down to the defendant, who's the person that is to be evicted, and explain to them what happened, where was the breakdown in communication, then it's almost like I don't have to persuade that judge or jury. They understand that I'm using my words very clearly, clear concepts, and as a result, it's an easy slam dunk case. Also, learn when to use humor. Humor will make the most awkward situation turn into a very good situation. So again,
yeah. Got a question. Listening to what you're saying, we've got the paralegal side of things, we've got the attorney side of things. Can you give us maybe 2 or 3 skills that are in common with both sides? I'm a paralegal right now or a paralegal student. I'm a great communicator. I can write effectively. Is that something that I need as an attorney, or even some soft skills in there that are similar or the same on both sides of the aisle, if you will?
So I would say back in the day, there were some similar skill sets. But someone talked about the e-court system and how things are changing and just artificial intelligence in general. And so one of the things that I am talking to my colleagues who are attorneys about is I can't keep up. I can't keep up with the rate of change, with the laws that are changing. I can't keep up with practices. So if you're a paralegal, you may know this trick where if you have something with a court seal, right? You take a pencil and then you hold up the piece of paper and you put it at like a 45-degree angle and you scratch it, and then you can visually see that seal. Well, that may have been transferable, but now with the change of the amount of regulations that are coming out, the e-court system, a lot of the federal programs are going from paper to digital. Just be aware that what used to be commonplace is not necessarily commonplace. So as attorneys, we're all just trying to keep up. As far as just soft skills, networking. So making sure you're a great networker. By networking, for example, I just love the elderly people. It's just something that, people like kids, and don't get me wrong, I've got 3 small kids, but I'm more in tune with the elderly. By networking, I was able to make a connection, and I'm now doing a podcast for caretaking. Okay. So make those connections, and you can do that either as a student or you can do that as a paralegal. And again, it goes back to those Fave 5. The other thing is concise writing. To be honest with you, and I think the paralegals know this now, most court documents are just someone else's borrowed work. So if I want a motion, an order, or a notice or something, I'm just going to reach out to my friends and say, hey, do you have this, right? So yes, there is a benefit to writing clear and concisely, but a lot of the stuff that is submitted is just borrowed work from someone else. I think that's why, and I probably will see some nods of heads. Anybody ever seen the 55 million letters that come to you when you get in a car accident and they all sound about the same? Well, it's basically because the same companies are the ones that are contracting with the attorneys, and so they all have the same letters. So it doesn't really matter if it comes from the Smith law firm or the Jones law firm or the Johnson law firm, because they're all contracting with the same vendor to get those letters to you ASAP. So yeah, I mean, writing, but not really. It's really all about networking. The other thing I would say is it's also about just being in the right place at the right time. So making sure you make yourself accessible to all people. And I am a big believer that you have to be friendly to all, because it may be someone that you need down the road to make that connection with. So maybe you're a paralegal and you are in a really bad work environment. Just grit through it and know that maybe your attorney really needs your assistance because they cannot get something out the door without you, right? On the other hand, you may be a law student who you have an issue with a professor. Going back to whether it be a paralegal or a law student, make sure that you understand that that may be the connection you need. So don't do anything that would not be wise. Okay.
All
And then
right, got
in
another
general,
quick
I think,
question.
yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, just in general, I would say time management. So that's, I think, like step 4. I think I give 5 steps. So that goes back to the artificial intelligence and using other people's forms. If you're in law school, then you probably have been assigned to read 100 pages a night. And when I first started as a 1L, I thought, how am I going to do this? Well, the way you do this is they don't really want you to read. What they're doing is they're prepping you as an attorney to have to multitask in 500 different ways, but making sure those 2 to 3 projects that you agreed to are not necessarily going to slip through the door. So, other question, is it about the in-house attorney one?
The question I had, and you just touched on it, how hard was it to transition from a paralegal to law school, especially that 1L year? Because paralegal school ain't necessarily the same thing.
Um, so what I will tell you is that I personally felt like being an older student, it was almost like I was going back to high school. And it really caused the people who had real life experience to group together more so than the people who went straight from undergrad to grad. And it's not to say that I'm looking down or patronizing or anything, but I had bills. I had other things that were obligations. And the one thing that they will tell you as a 1L is that you're not supposed to work, because you're supposed to devote all your resources and effort to being a law student. Yeah, I didn't tell anybody, but I worked. I had bills. So fast forward, you've just got to have your head in the game. And if you are already connected, like you're married or have kids, then your support networks have to be there to realize you're going to have to do whatever's necessary to pass. The benefit, I think, to going through law school is I feel as though, as far as systems, I can understand a system very well, whether it be a work system, whether it be, how to get my kid into the best program at her school. And I use a lot of networking to do that. But I think that's a benefit, that's a life skill that you can use wherever you go, as far as whether you become a lawyer or an engineer. So I would say, you've just got to have your head in the game. I see Kathy said thoughts on working as in-house attorney specializing in consumer law. Consumer law is a hot topic. It's going to be a hot topic for a while because of how aggressive creditors can be. The one thing I would tell you about in-house attorney is I have several colleagues who serve as in-house general counsel to certain things, and a lot of them have had to move across the world. So like I have someone who's in Dubai right now who I graduated with. They tend to make killer bucks, but they also devote their soul and energy and everything to that business. And if that business goes under, the downside to that is what do you do next? The benefit is I mean, they're flying all over the world, doing cool things, showing off stuff, and their photos are only photos that I dream of. So lots of times the in-house attorney positions can be cushy, kind of like a law professor position. The other thing I will say though is, as an in-house attorney for an executive director, as far as like a nonprofit, those aren't cushy. And you're expected to work long hours, and you really have to have heart in the game. So just be aware there's a difference between whether it be for a private company or a non-private company.
All right,
And
again,
I
this is
think
your
that's it. So
chance.
let me go back.
As she's transitioning her slides, this is a great opportunity for you to ask a question, any question, especially our folks who are students. If you have a specific question, it doesn't have to be necessarily about being a lawyer, just you're in paralegal school right now. You have an opportunity to speak to someone who's been where you are. She's walked that walk. She's read those books. She's taken those tests, if you will. So feel free to speak directly to Misty. She's open to answer those questions. All right, let's get back to Misty. Go right ahead.
So talking about tests, you bring up a very valid point, Kimberly, and that is a lot of the, whether it be for the paralegal or for the law school for becoming an attorney, a lot of the information is the same. So what I would suggest is get your hands on either the course outlines and or on what is the testing material. So for example, when I took the bar exam, I knew, because North Carolina is only one of 4 states that recognizes tenants by the entirety, we were not going to be quizzed on tenants by the entirety, more than likely. So I spent all my time and effort dealing with other terms of art in real property. So make the most of your time, whether it be as a paralegal student and or you're a paralegal thinking about becoming an attorney, and really think, is this worth my time? And this kind of goes to step 2. So think about, what are your core issues? Can this problem be resolved? Yes or no? And if it can be resolved, resolve it. But then ask yourself, is it worth it? So is it worth it to resolve the issue or just let it go? And the reason I say that is because in the legal industry, whether you become a paralegal or whether you become an attorney or whether you become in-house, at the end of the day, it's all about requirements and money. Everything is requirements and money, okay? So at the end of the day, you're always going to have more work than what you can do. And you need to be able to let go of what you cannot do. And I say that because going back to going to law school and making me read, 100 pages, and you could potentially be called on the next day to brief the class. I realized that was prepping me so that I would understand there's always going to be more work to be done than what you can get done in a day, and you just need to go with it.
Misty, before you move, we have a great question from Elizabeth. She wants to know, has North Carolina adopted the next gen bar? How do we study for that using old commercial materials?
I'm going to be honest with you. I know the UBE, but I don't know about the next gen bar. I don't even know what the next gen bar is. What I can tell you is once you graduate, so you go through law school and you think this is what it's going to be, an attorney is going to be like. No, it's not like that whatsoever. So just be aware that the exposure you get through law school is not what being an attorney is like. And just be aware that being a paralegal is not exposing you to what an attorney is being like. The reason I say that is, yes, as a paralegal, you do have to take that client's call that calls you every day and says, what's the status of my case? And you say, well, Mrs. Smith, the status of your case today is the same as it was yesterday. As I told you yesterday, we will advise you when the court has come out with a new blah, blah, blah. And then it's in your discretion whether you bill for that 6 minutes or not. I assume that people are doing hourly rates, and so they're billing for that 6 minutes. You deal with that, but at the end of the day, the paralegal can always say, well, that's the attorney's issue. But the attorney, typically, their name's on the building, their name is on social media, and that client at the end of the day may say, well, P. Carr Law Firm, I hate you. You never gave me a status update. And you would say, every day I'll get back to you. But they won't necessarily tie that to you. And that affects the future earnings for that attorney. So the guilt, if you will, or just that overarching hanging of, is this person going to be the person who, ruins my reputation? And this is more so in the smaller counties, although it can happen in the bigger counties too. You really have to be wondering about what I say, what I do, what make a difference in what's going to happen. Elizabeth, for the next gen bar, the best thing I can tell you is I would go to those groups, and I forgot their name, but one puts out, Barbary, and I forgot the other one, Multi-State, I think, and see if they have any information they're willing to share, because their book of business is literally to get students to sign up to take their courses so that they can then help you pass the bar. So they've got to have good passage rates and see what they know. And I don't have any connections or anything, but if you go online and do, like a Google search for like Barbary plus NC plus Next Gen, I bet you would find people who would be willing to give you some really good information free of charge, because they're hoping you would sign up for that stuff. So, any other questions before I move on?
All right. Any other questions? This is your chance, especially if you are an entry level paralegal, if you're a paralegal student, or if you've got mid-career goals to move on to the attorney realm. This is your chance to speak directly to someone who's taken that journey from beginning to end and continuing on. So again, you can raise your hand, you can speak directly, or you can drop your comment or question in the chat. I have another one while we're doing this.
Okay.
Misty, now that you are an attorney, you work for state government, do you ever look back at your journey and say, wow, I did a lot? Or do you just sometimes reminisce and say, I went from a paralegal, career-wise, from a paralegal to an attorney in this amount of time, and just sit back and reflect on that? Do you do a lot of that?
I think most attorneys over volunteer, and so they don't have time to really reflect. Because if anyone knows anything about me, and this is very similar trait amongst a lot of attorneys, they sit on several boards, they are doing podcasts for their hobbies, they're always doing stuff, volunteering, and maybe it's just me and my core friends. So I haven't looked back, but I will tell you the benefit to being an attorney is it gives you a self-confidence that you would not have otherwise. And the reason I say is because you know how to work systems,
Mm-hmm.
and you know how to literally go into the details. So, for example, the counties are coming out with these self-assessments with property tax rates, right? And I know I'm going to get hit pretty hard. And at the end of the day, if you're a property owner, it doesn't matter if you're an attorney, an engineer, a teacher, well, you want to know about the system. But as an attorney, I feel as though I am probably one of the most eligible to go against the county to, contest what value they're going to give me. Oh, and then the benefit is I have the skill set to go into the general statutes to find out what they can and can't do. And so I'm going to call out Durham County, and I'm going to say, Durham, no, you did this in pursuant to North Carolina General Statute, blah, blah, blah. You can't do this. So I do think there's a benefit. And I almost feel like just like there should be a course in high school where high school students are taught how to address a letter, how to send out a letter and where to put the stamp, how to write out a check. I do wish that high schools would go back to this. This is what you need to know from a legal perspective, because it does give you the self-confidence to know what your rights are, what your rights are not, what you're entitled to and what you're not entitled to, just as a human being. So,
All right. We've got a question from B. Cox. And looking your chat, she's asking, what are your thoughts about the possibility of North Carolina adopting a limited license legal technician program as alternate career path for paralegals? A lot of discussion on that.
So I was going to get to that. So I'm glad you're asking about it. If the LLLT was available to me when I was coming out, I probably would have gone to the route of LLLT.
Mhm.
The rationale is you don't have the stressors that an attorney has. You're not held to the limit that an attorney is. I have a sister-in-law and she's a nurse practitioner and she'll be going, and I didn't even know this was possible. She's going for her doctorate in nursing, but it's going to be an elevated step. So she can already write script, she can already do everything. But at the end of the day, she can leave her work behind because she's tied to a doctor who oversees her work. I cannot leave my work behind. At the end of the day, whether it be the state bar coming after me, the bar association, the rules of professional conduct, whatever it may be, my head is on the chopping block. The other thing is from a limited license legal technician, this is something that's probably going to be very beneficial in estate planning, estate administration, divorce, some types of family law, but maybe not necessarily in mergers and acquisitions. So if you're going to want to go that route, and I know that there's a lot of talking about it, and there's a lot of pressure from the Bar Association not to let it go through, then, well, from the attorney perspective, then I would say make sure that the LLLT would be compatible with the type of law you want to go into. And the way I would tell you to kind of understand what type of law you want to go into is to dabble in it all. So before you hang your hat up as an immigration lawyer, go try to do some visa applications and see what that's like. Because some attorneys, they love to be litigators. In fact, I was talking to my attorney friend yesterday. She really likes it. I despise it. And one of the reasons I despise it is just the whole notion of having to go to the courthouse, find a parking space, pay for the parking. Back when I was a paralegal, there wasn't a lot of Spanish speaking people, and I speak Spanish. And so I had to do a lot of translating for people. To me, I just rather be a paper pusher. I'm a transactional attorney. That's what I like to do is push paper. I do not like to litigate. I don't like to be quick on my feet. So know that about yourself before you decide to hang your shingle on whatever route you want to go.
Good advice. All right, we're ready for the next slide.
Okay. Thanks for being so interactive. I appreciate that. Okay. Time management. Okay. So look at your plan. So one thing I would suggest you all do, and I do this. So one of the things that I've done for like the last 14 years is I do New Year's resolutions, and I have this big, massive Excel sheet, and I've divided it into 4 groups like financial, professional, personal, and then networking. And I usually put like 3 to 4 things in there of what I want to do. But it's been really interesting to see me progress. Like, you could literally see from a personal standpoint, like, find a husband, get married, have kids. From a professional standpoint, it was, build my book of business, get different like law offices, do better with time management, do work-life balance. So after a decade and a half, I'm starting to see what is it that really motivates me. And then when I go back to look at it, I say, okay, I can see what I wanted 7 years ago versus today. So maybe, Kimberly, I'm wrong. Maybe I do look and reminisce about where did I get and how did I get there? Okay. But for you personally, think about where you are now and what do you want to see yourself in 5 years? And think about it from a personal standpoint. So, do you want to go and become a paralegal? Do you want to become an attorney? Or are you doing this just for your own motivation? Okay. And then think about your priorities and forget all the unnecessary ones. So, again, time management. Then leverage tools that help you. So, this is Gamma. This is brand new. This was made by this program. It's free of charge, and it took me 15 minutes. So, I'd be interested in thinking about your thoughts. But as a result, using this program, is permitting me to speak at 2 other presentations this week versus going through PowerPoints and creating it. So again, think about the tools in order to get to your plan, and then discipline. So keep your plan handy, and every month or so pull it out and say, okay, yes, 2 years from now, I want it to be an attorney, or 2 years from now, I want to be a paralegal. But now I think about, I really want to be that LLLT. And this is how I need to do this to get here. So have that discipline to keep looking at what you need to do. As an attorney, what this means is keep your consultation times exact and redevelop your forms. So consultation times, an hour is an hour, not an hour and 7 minutes, okay? Because you could lose time as far as what time you can start your next client to bill. I am notoriously bad for that because as an attorney, I like to hear myself talk. All attorneys do. As I tell people, we're used to charging at every 6 minutes is an extra $17.50 or $27.50 an hour or $37.50 an hour. So of course I want to talk that extra 6 minutes. I get $37 more, right? And then redevelop your forms, redevelop your work process so that, again, in lieu of having to transfer data or integrate data that maybe your client's given you, that it's already supplied to you in the format and the way you need it. So it's just a copy and paste. And I think one of the ways that this has been accomplished is in the law practice realm. It used to be, checks were submitted and everything. Well, now all the lawyers have ePay on their websites. And that just helps so much as far as saving time. So anything about time management that you all think would be beneficial, either as a paralegal and or law student, or maybe you're in paralegal school that you think, this is a way I could save money as far as or save time as far as adopting this. So if there's anything you can think about, by all means share it in the chat box.
All right, as we wind down, we're going to shift a gear or two. First question, your favorite TV show?
Favorite TV show? Well, I've got 3 small kids, 2 are in diapers, so I really don't get time to watch TV, but if I watch TV, it would be Diggers right now. And for any of you that know about Diggers, Diggers is a 24/7 live stream of excavators digging dirt.
Okay, next question. Your favorite song or favorite songs or favorite artist?
I wouldn't say I have a favorite song. I would say I have a favorite genre, and that would be reggaeton. So I lived in Dominican Republic and in Cuba for a while. So I like a lot of techno because I lived in Poland and Russia as well. I did a lot of study abroad. So I like the techno and just the fast dancing. So, and you might see me occasionally dancing at a stoplight once or twice.
Okay, same thing. Your favorite TV law show? Is there a law show on cable or on regular TV or streaming that you really like, or you at least look at once or twice?
Not really, like Suits, all the other Law and Order and stuff. If I did watch them, and again, be aware that I did watch TV before I had 3 small kids, and they're all within 5 years. Now I just don't have the ability. But I would watch them to be like, oh, that's not the way things are done, right? Or this is not the way trial actually works. Or no, the client shows up at the last minute and says, well, I forgot to tell you about this little fact. And you think, well, this is the little fact that could break your case. So when I watched them, I would watch them and say, oh, wow, this is really made by Hollywood. And they have no idea how this really works in the real life.
Okay, one more question on that line. Your favorite kids show, since we have some folks, young folks at the house, tell us about those kids shows. Which one? Bluey, Peppa Pig? What do you like? What do you really like?
I think I like Rainbow Rangers. So if no one's watched Rainbow Rangers, it's basically these little ranger girls who are on unicorns. The reason is because I have 2 girls, one that just turned 6, one that just turned 3. And in our household, it is a battle as in like epic style as to what's better, unicorns or mermaids. So Rainbow Rangers it is, and they each have a special power. And like Ruby has this power, and Sadie has this power. So Rainbow Rangers. Although mom's typically not watching it, mom's usually packing lunches and stuff in the background.
Okay, this is your last chance. If you have a question, comment, it's open mic, as they used to say. This is an open time for you to interact with Misty. Again, she was a paralegal. She moved into the law school range. Then she moved on to becoming an attorney. She works for the state of North Carolina, so she has a breadth of knowledge. This is your chance. You can unmute, raise your hand, or drop that comment in the chat. Tony says, great session, Misty. How about that? So she likes what you said.
The one thing I would add is just make sure that, I'm in state practice, but there's nothing that says I can't then go practice law, right? So make sure you keep up to date with whatever it is. So I'm constantly following what estate planning and estate administration practices are. I'm constantly keeping in contact with estate attorneys and so forth. So maybe you do become in-house attorney specializing in consumer law. Make sure you still then have your connections other way around other places, but also attend those continuing education credits so you're still in the know. Don't lose that just because you step into an in-house role for 20 years.
Okay, Kathy has a question. Thoughts on states that do not require passing the bar to practice law. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So my thought is that the bar exam itself was just a lot of studying. And I personally recall July 4th, I would call out random numbers in a parking lot. And I would go walk to that number and then cite in my head what that rule of civil procedure was. Because 4, then I talk about service, rule 4. And I think I spent a lot of time and effort for that bar exam, which really means nothing. On the other hand, I have a lot of good friends who never passed the bar, who attended law school, and I don't think they're less qualified than I am. So although a lot of attorneys won't feel this way, I think the passing of the bar itself really has no indication as to whether someone's going to be a good attorney or not, which is why I think a lot of the bar exams do have that component now, that third component where it's about, writing a motion or order so they can see your work product more so than actually seeing, can you memorize facts? And I would suggest if you do go to law school, take very good advantage of all the clinics that you can do because that's a way to find out whether you're going to like that or not. So.
All right. Thank you, Misty. Let's give her a hand. We appreciate that. And again, if you have any questions, if you want to stay on a little longer, you can ask directly. But again, we want to wrap up, and we really appreciate your knowledge, your background, and of course, sharing some of your personal information with us. We always like to ask folks about their favorite fill in the blank. So you have a good day, Misty, and everyone else, you have a good day as well.